All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. Going to be getting into the first look build here for week 2. Let's go ahead and get into it. Now, just a quick recap from last week. Was able to take down a smaller GPP for the Monday Night Showdown, which was very nice. But that's also the reason why I'm coming out with this video a little bit later on Wednesday than I typically would maybe Tuesday or Monday night even. And that's really due to some of the news that we got, especially out of San Francisco with Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is looking like he could sit again, which means Jordan Mason's going to be really a chalk option. But just real quickly, more recaps from last week. Was able to finally end up on what I thought was a very good and safe build that I put in the 9 to 5 members write-up, which was really just a video that I posted for 9 to 5 members. That one easily cashed, ended up just taking some of the chalk running backs, really just Alvin Kamara and Rashad White, and then going with Joe Mixon and some of the other plays that I really liked. Also, we had a lot of 9 to 5 members sending in some screenshots of some really good weeks GPP-wise, citing the 9 to 5 lineup builder as a source of success, which is obviously I like to see that. So very solid week 1, I would say. Personally, I wish I would prioritize my lineups a little bit more on Monday night rather than working on some tools so I could have entered bigger and better contests than what I did. I'm not going to complain about a win. That's nice. But looking at this week, guys, let's get into the running backs because that is really where I think we are going to get the plays that we want to be on the most. And so at the running back position, I just want to go over some of the plays that we can be on. Like Jonathan Taylor played in 90% of the snaps. It's a week where you're either playing Anthony Richardson or Jonathan Taylor. I would argue they probably should have given Jonathan Taylor a little bit more work. There's a little bit too much read options going on, which was great for Anthony Richardson, not so good for Jonathan Taylor. Maybe gets a little bit more traditional carries going, and honestly, you probably win that game. Taylor did not look bad, just for what it's worth. The stats might say he didn't look good, but he's going to get a good matchup against Green Bay. Should be a high volume game for him, especially given the fact that Malik Willis is going to be the starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. That's also part of the reason as to why I waited, is because we didn't know if Malik Willis would be the starting quarterback or if it would be Sean Clifford. I do think that changes the slate a little bit. I'll touch on that. But I do think we really want to be ending up on at least one running back from this game. Josh Jacobs is someone that I expect to have a good game. The Colts were really gashed by Joe Mixon in that game. Really not that much resistance for Mixon as well. Like, he was able to get what was given to him and then get a little bit more. We actually saw with Josh Jacobs last week that a little bit of a struggle in the first half, sure, but the O-line was able to figure it out, and with a little bit of room, Josh Jacobs was able to kind of go out and look like the very solid running back that he is. Over 100 yards total in that game. I would expect him to get a few more design catches in this game, and it's just a cheap price tag for a guy that's going to be a workhorse running back again, for a guy that we can trust to get around 20 opportunities in this game, and obviously really looked good last week. And so I like the idea of starting out with Josh Jacobs. Now, some people might hate that, and that's fine. We have other options that we can go with. The easiest one, I would say, on this slate, other than the next play I'll touch on, is going to be Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams went back to his exact same role that I was expecting. I hope most people were expecting. I was telling people throughout the whole offseason, it's not going to be Blake Corum as the RB2. It's going to be Ronnie Rivers, but also I think it's just going to be more of the same from last year. And that ended up coming to fruition. Now, that's only 1 week. That could change. They might look at that and say, yes, we got Blake Corum. We got Ronnie Rivers. 2 backs that are basically the same as Kyren Williams, maybe a little bit worse. We need to limit Kyren Williams' workload. They might do that. But at the end of the day, Sean McVay has really made it clear that when the game is going, he kind of tosses that all aside and it's all about winning that game. So Kyren Williams, just give him that high workload that he's going to get maybe a slightly better matchup going against Arizona. He only had 3 targets in that game, which with Puka Nacua now on the IR, maybe we get a few more design catches to go his way, but I think we are going to be locking in around 20 opportunities again in this game, in a game that should be better for the Rams in terms of matchup, and we're just getting high volume out of these 2 running backs at such a cheap price tag. Now, obviously, if we get news that CMC is out, and news just dropped that he is looking like he is mostly looking like he's going to sit in this game, then we are just looking at Jordan Mason in this game. Now, I know the matchup with Minnesota, it says it's 5, the 5th best matchup. That's just based off of last week. Devin Singletary, Eric Ray, and Tyrone Tracy really didn't look bad. I actually blame most of that loss on kind of just bad game plan. Like, Daniel Jones didn't look terrible. I know he got a lot of hate online. Watching some of the other quarterback play, I thought he looked much better than some of the other quarterback play. Quarterback play was trash in week 1, guys. And there was a big drop off honestly, it was just some of the worst quarterback play I've seen watching film. And if you guys don't know, I go back and watch every game, especially at the start of the season, so I can give you guys informed takes, not just bro talk about stats and stuff that anyone can do. I like to give you guys actual information. But obviously Jordan Mason, he looked good. He's always been one of those guys where we have just been waiting for him to get the opportunity. If you guys play preseason NFL DFS, that's always what it's been with him. And he finally got that opportunity and looked good. It wasn't shocking that he looked that good. And so going back to the matchup with Minnesota, I think the Giants should have tried to rush the football a little bit more in that game. They were able to get, around 3 yards per carry in most cases. And I don't see the Vikings defense providing that much resistance. I would have thought the Jets defense would have provided more resistance, and I think that is going to be the case as well. So Jordan Mason, I think he's going to be chalk, but it's just kind of the easy option, especially if CMC is out. Now, we do have one other situation to talk about as well, guys. We really have 5 running back plays that we can be on this slate in general that we should be going out of our way to target given their price tags. The other one is going to be dealing with this Seattle backfield. Now, they don't have the best matchup going against the Patriots. That is my one concern. But if Kenneth Walker is out, Guys, Kenneth Walker looked so good last week. He did. Kenneth Walker is probably one of the more underrated running backs in the league. Gosh, he's just phenomenal, really. It's kind of annoying that he has a good backup in Zach Sharp. So he is someone that I think will be chalk. And honestly, if Kenneth Walker's out, I do think we're probably just loading up on him and Jordan Mason and then maybe Kyron Williams, just taking that heavy workload. But again, Josh Jacobs would be in play. Jonathan Taylor's in play as well. We need to get the news on Kenneth Walker. If he's out, we're looking here. But I do want to call it that it probably wouldn't be as much of a lock and load as people would think. Kenny McIntosh does provide some upside, especially in the passing game as well. So, all right, let's go ahead and jump on into the receivers. And it's pretty clear that we need to be going out of our way to target Cooper Kupp. I mean, it's pretty simple, guys. Puka Nakua's out. He had freaking 21 targets, 14 catches. He's going to be chalk. He should be chalk. Good matchup going against Arizona. We just do not need to overthink that. The question becomes, do we want to go in on another Rams player? The answer is probably yes. Now, whether that's Colby Parkinson at tight end or another receiver, that's really what we have to figure out. And my concern is that we might see a different look this week than what we saw last week in terms of the priority of the receivers getting reps. Last week, it ended up being Tyler Johnson kind of coming in and somewhat taking over for the Puka Nacua role. We saw Demarcus Robinson get more targets and more production with Puka Nacua off the field, but Tyler Johnson became, in a sense, the Puka Nacua role player, which to me was a little bit shocking. I actually thought it would be Jordan Whittington. Whittington looked like Puka Nacua 2.0, honestly, in the preseason. Did a lot of the things well that Puka Nacua did well. Kind of had the same, he just looked the same on film. It's a simple way to put it. Same body, same athletic build, it seemed like, and plays, good hands. And so that's my long way of saying, yes, we're probably favoring Tyler Johnson there. In GPPs, I think you could be sneaky with Whittington. It wouldn't be too shocking to see him actually go out and have a big game, because in the preseason, it actually was him. It was not Tyler Johnson. And so that could just be a case of maybe Sean McVay doesn't have trust in him to have the full playbook down. But Tyler Johnson is kind of another one of those players that throughout his career, he kind of reminds me of another Johnson, Duke Johnson, the running back that used to be in the NFL, where all the fantasy bros loved him. They're like, oh, he's going to break out. And they kept saying that throughout his whole career, because he looks good whenever he gets the opportunities. There's just something missing there. That's how I've always felt about Tyler Johnson. Like, when he's on the field, he is producing and looking good. I don't mind the idea of taking the value if we get some sort of indication that he indeed will be that receiver number 3. Now, my concern is maybe Tutu Atwell. Maybe he becomes the slot receiver in this game. But at the end of the day, I think the safer route is probably going with Demarcus Robinson. That's probably the route that we should be going with. And so really how I look at it, deciding between Robinson and Tyler Johnson as it sits right now, whichever player I have salary for, I'm happy. So I'll prioritize Robinson, but if I need to go down to Tyler Johnson, I'm happy to do that. In terms of pay-ups, I don't mind the idea of actually going with CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is someone that had 10 targets. I love chasing those targets. Obviously, getting him on the field a lot. Cleveland was a difficult matchup, and he still almost ended up with 14 points if we round up. Given the matchup against the Saints, I don't mind the matchup. Watching the game back, Bryce Young was trash, guys. He was terrible. He missed Deontay Johnson open a lot. He missed Adam Thielen open a lot. Wasn't good in the pocket. But my takeaway is that, yeah, you can beat this Saints defense. Like CeeDee Lamb should be able to go out and have a good game against them. And so I do like the idea of paying up for CeeDee Lamb. The question is that dumb to play him, honestly, given the fact that we can maybe get like Rashid Rice at this cheap price tag, 9 targets in that game, 103 receiving yards. Last week was supposed to be a difficult matchup against Baltimore. It was not. Cincinnati, sure, on paper, this is looking like a difficult matchup, given that they have the second overall rating for stopping opposing points against the opposing receivers. I didn't really see that. It's the Patriots. They don't really have good receivers. Brissett had a good game. Stevenson had a good game. My takeaway is that good receivers, good offenses can operate and function out of them. And so I think for now, I'd rather go with Rice. But that's kind of where I'm at, is deciding between those guys. We have a lot of good lineup fillers that I'm kind of fine ending up on. Like literally, basically all the top end receivers, I'm kind of fine ending up on them. At the same time, I don't feel the need to go out of my way to rostering them. So let's go ahead and get into the tight end position here, guys. To me, there's really two that we're looking at. Tucker Kraft, I argue, probably should have been one of the top tight end pickups of the week. I know everyone's going to Isaiah Likely. I think a good sneaky ad is actually Tucker Kraft. He outsnapped Luke Musgrave. If you guys watched the film on Luke Musgrave, he was the reason why they got the 12th man on the field call, Luke Musgrave. And then he was also the reason why Jordan Love threw an INT in that game. It'd be mind-numbing to me as a Packers fan to see Luke Musgrave back on the field, especially more so than Tucker Kraft. Tucker Kraft has looked better than him in every instance throughout his whole career. Now, they're both young, I get it, but I would argue Musgrave was the biggest reason why the Packers lost last week. No joke. Now, yes, there was a DPI that wasn't called on that INT. Bond got to Luke Musgrave early, sure, but he was still soft. You need to fight through that. Tucker Kraft looked good. He had 3 targets. He had 37 receiving yards. I like this route. I like this with Indy. The issue, again, is that we have Malik Willis as the quarterback. I actually don't mind the idea of stacking Kraft and Willis as like a salary relief option, especially if you're not playing Jacobs. I think that's a good GPP stack. But again, the choice is really between him and Colby Parkinson. We have good discounted value because of, Puka Nacua being injured. We saw Colby Parkinson have 5 targets, 47 receiving yards. He was involved in that offense. If you guys look back to last year, that's actually the exact same thing that happened with Tyler Higbee, is when Cooper Kupp was out, and this has been the case with his whole career, when the opposite starting receiver has been out, the tight end play has increased. And so I do expect that to be the same case again this week. So really don't mind Colby Parkinson at that price tag. The issue is, do we really want to be loading up on that many Rams? I think the answer is yes, because that's the nature of the slate, but it does get me a little bit weary. For what it's worth, guys, I want to call out 2 other things here for the tight end position as well. Taysom Hill was involved in this offense. He was very much involved. He was the RB2 for what it's worth. He had an end zone target that he almost brought in. Kind of a good defensive play as well. Good throw by Derek Carr as well. Just overall, great NFL play. But he was involved. I wouldn't be surprised to see him score a touchdown. I think he's actually going to have a nice, safe floor and really provide some upside. His floor might be 4 fantasy points. Like, he only had 1 catch in that game and still managed 4 fantasy points because he was involved in the rushing game and looked good doing it. Like, we saw that in the preseason. We got kind of a preview of that he might be maybe the 4th on this offense in terms of being an offensive weapon. Obviously, Kamara, but he's being used sparingly-ish. Chris Olave, Shaheed, and then it's Taysom Hill. And so maybe he does get a little bit more involvement. And then Zach Ertz as well. So Zach Ertz going against the Giants. He had 4 targets in that game, played about 70% of the snaps, played a lot of snaps. Now, the issue, Jaden Daniels definitely ran the football a little bit too much to sustain a lot of production to pass catchers, but they want to call it Ertz. That is a cheap price tag there as well. So from there, where can we go at the quarterback position? I do think if we're not playing Jonathan Taylor again, we probably just want to be playing Anthony Richardson. Now, what I ended up doing last week is I ended up just going with Justin Fields because I felt like he provided a nice, safe floor that also allowed me to get to a very, very strong floor build. I don't know if that's actually the case this week because of all the value that we have. I think we can easily fit in Anthony Richardson and feel good about it, have a nice, safe floor build. Richardson had one of the weirdest games, honestly. Had 4 really good throws, ran the football very well, but also had some ugly throws. This is like Cam Newton 2.0. It really is. He's a fun player, good fantasy asset. I think we're going to be playing him in our DFS lineups, but if we don't, maybe you guys want to get elsewhere. I don't hate the idea of Matthew Stafford. I think we need the 300-point bonus. I don't want to go with Baker this week. I actually am toying around with the idea of playing a little bit of Daniel Jones in GPPs. He ran the ball 6 times. I would argue he probably should have been a little bit more decisive on some of his runs. Probably should have had a bigger game running. Washington defense gave up a lot. Now, the Minnesota defense was supposed to be a good matchup as well. I don't mind the idea of getting some exposure to him in GPPs. Maybe he scores a rushing touchdown. Now, squint when I say this, guys, like... But I don't mind the idea of going with Malik Willis. I think Matt LaFleur is going to be able to scheme open some plays for him. It's just whether or not he can execute those. But the Packers made a point of going out and getting Malik Willis. They clearly like him. And so that, to me, it causes me to have like a positive spin on this situation, specifically for Malik Willis as a DFS play. In the preseason, we have seen Willis have a pretty good floor rushing the football. If we can get the Justin Fields experience out of him, which is around 11 fantasy points, mostly due to a high floor of rushing, I like that. But you tack on the fact that this is a good offense. I know Wicks had a couple of drops, but this offense isn't going to be playing on that terrible field again. Like some of the mistakes that were made, I don't think are going to happen again. So I don't think we need to go this low on this slate because we already have a lot of clarity that maybe we didn't have in week one, to the point where we need to make an extremely safe build to punt down there. I do think going with Richardson is the way to go because look at this, guys. We have 3.6 left over. Very easy to make a good build from here. Like defensively, I actually am toying around with the idea of actually paying up a little bit at defense this week because we have some of this good value and we actually have some defenses in some good spots. For me, the Steelers defense against Denver is a spot that really stands out to me, guys. Denver should have won that game by a lot. They have Russell Wilson still as their quarterback. They do win that game by a lot. There's no reason that game should have been close, especially with how well the Denver defense played. But the Steelers defense did look pretty good against Atlanta. 12 points in that game. They didn't even score a defensive touchdown. And now you get this matchup against Denver, a matchup where Bo Nix did struggle. He made some poor decisions throwing the football. Everything was in front. The defense was definitely keeping it in front. It's tough to imagine any big plays being popped here. And so I do like the idea of paying up for the Steelers DST. Now, that goes against my whole defensive strategy with DFS. I always like to go with the lowest price defense that I think will not go negative. Last week, that was the Cardinals. They ended up with a defensive touchdown, ended up with 9 fantasy points. That was huge. That was probably the biggest difference maker between having it be a good week and a bad week in a lot of cases for the main slate. The issue that I have is I'm not exactly sure that we have a DST that's this low price that I have pure confidence will be able to not go negative. I could see playing the Cardinals again, but that doesn't make any logical sense with where we're going with our lineup process. Like, I don't think the Cardinals will go negative. But again, we already are loading up on so many Rams players that doesn't make sense. I don't hate the idea of going with the Patriots. I think Denver's D will be fine. Again, they look solid. But at that point, I'm like, just pay up for the best defense to play on the board this week and go with the Steelers. And we still have plenty of salary left over to fit in, well, in this case, again, Tyler Johnson. Like, that's a very solid build there. I do want to mention a couple of value spots that we could be looking at as well, guys. Devon Valet here, he is someone that was heavily involved in the passing game. Everything was underneath, had 8 targets, 8 receptions, only 39 yards. But he looked fine. But argue Josh Reynolds looked good as well. But, not a terrible play at 3.4. You guys could easily play someone like that. But yeah, I think this is a very solid base build that we have here. Now, are there some slight changes we can make to this? For sure. Like, let's say you are worried about Malik Willis and his quarterback play, and you think that that's really going to hurt Josh Jacobs as an asset. That's fine. And let's say we get that Walker news that he might be sitting. There we go. We got a lot of salary left over now, and now we have a lot more that we can do with our lineup here. Maybe go up from Tyler Johnson to Demarcus Robinson. I'd be fine to do that. Wendell Robinson as well. Like, Wendell Robinson was fine. He got a lot of targets in that game. And I really don't mind this idea. I don't think Daniel Jones looked nearly as bad as what social media would tell you he did. Now, he wasn't great. Like, don't get me wrong. But he was serviceable to the point that we can look at someone like Robinson at this cheap price tag in a good matchup. I don't mind going with stuff like this. And I did just want to show you guys kind of my thought process with, like, potentially playing Willis. Like, it could work in the sense that you then are able to fit CeeDee Lamb, Cooper Kupp, and Rice, high floor plays there, Kyron Williams in there. And again, like, maybe we don't even need to play him. Maybe we can go with Sharm. And then you still have a lot of salary left over for your flex. Like, I don't mind that. Now, I'd like the first build that I showed you guys the most. But here's a slightly different variation again off of that lineup, that first lineup. Say you didn't want to go Tyler Johnson. You could then just go with Zay Flowers, who I don't think is a drop off that much from Rice, and then you're able to fit Robinson. Like, this is a safe build as well. Now, I do just want to call out, guys, some 905 members were asking about the NFL DFS tools. Those should be available this week. So for week 1, we didn't have any in-season data to go off of. I really don't like referring to last year's data as a sign of what's going to happen this year. Sure, it's a good point of reference, but I think that leads to poor decision making. That's why I was really focused on people just using the 905 lineup builder and focusing on what where the top plays there and making the best builds from that. But the NFL DFS tool should be good to go by Sunday, hopefully by Thursday as well. I have most of it done. I'm just switching it over from an old database system to a new database system that's a little bit better for bigger data, which is I'm putting in more data in there, snap counts, Vegas projections, projections based off of DVP, players' averages, a bunch of stuff like that. Again, that's a bonus tool included, the cheat sheet, the NFL DFS cheat sheet. That's a bonus tool included in your 9-to-5 membership. So I include that because I can. It's not as big of a priority as the fantasy golf tools, as the prop tools, which are guaranteed tools. If that makes sense. But as always, if I can provide something more to the website that doesn't add a cost onto the website, I'll do that for you guys. So perfect time for the promo, I guess. So it's a $10 a month membership, guys. But for the first month that you guys sign up with your 9-to-5 membership, you can get it for $8 a month using the promo code Keep Cashing. So take advantage of that, guys. It's going to be very useful. But that's going to be all for today's video, guys. Well, here, one sec. Let's show you guys what the 9-to-5 lineup builder is telling us is going to be the best lineup for the main slate. And just as an FYI, once we get more and more Vegas data coming in, like it's earlier on in the week, this is going to update more and more. So it'll tell us more. To run this, we just need to give it 2 data points to go off of. So I'm just going to round up for a couple of these top end players here. Let's go with Cooper Kupp at 19 as well, just to give it some data to go off of. So we'll generate this, see what the 9-to-5 lineup builder is currently telling us is the most optimal lineup. And so let's take a peek at that. Yeah, we're not playing a tight end in the flex. So I'm going to set this rule real quick. Flex ineligible tight end. We're not doing that. No Mike Gesicki. For what it's worth, guys, don't be playing Mike Gesicki. Like Tanner Hudson had just as good of a game. They both probably should have scored a touchdown, but just missed out on them. But yeah, we don't want to do that. Honestly, if Foster Moreau is active, that's not a terrible value. I don't mind that. Wow, this is kind of ugly. Daniel Jones. I like Daniel Jones. I don't think we're doing Daniel Jones. This is interesting. Neighbors, I don't mind. So Neighbors has price tag. I do think he's kind of a fine, safe play, especially in a stack with Daniel Jones. So that's why it's prioritizing that. It's prioritizing the stack there. Let's go to Jared Goff here. Got another lineup here with Jared Goff. A little bit better, I would say. J.K. Dobbins, I'm a little bit worried about his workload. I wouldn't go there personally. I think obviously we're going with Jordan Mason. But always interesting to take a peek at that. Like I don't mind Godwin. I think that points out that we have good value in Chris Godwin, Neighbors, Kupp. It's kind of valuing Taylor over Anthony Richardson. So just noteworthy. And for what's worth, guys, like Najee Harris, he looked fine. He was like a bowling ball out there. Jaylen Warren may be injured. He looked fine though. Like I don't have any big takeaways from that. All right, but that's going to be all for this video. It ended up being a little bit longer than I would like to, but I feel like I gave you guys some good information here. Make sure to give a like and subscribe to the channel. Again, if you guys want access to any of the tools, the 9-to-5 lineup builder, head on over to 9to5sports.com. Available for just $10 a month. But when you use that promo code Keep Cashing, get it for 20% off. All right, thanks for watching. And as always, let's keep cashing.